Hello, good evening, and welcome to Sheffield Live. You are watching African Voices with me, Baillor Jalloh, and my colleague, Enoch Karimba. Hi, Enoch.
Hi, Baillor. Thanks for having me.
Right, as you can see, we are broadcasting. I'm in the main studio, but my colleague is joining us from home, Enoch. And we've got a special guest here today, Rehneesa Inez, who is the new BAME Community Engagement Officer for Sheffield Churches Council for Community Care. Hi, Rehneesa.
Hello, good to meet you.
Same here as well. Welcome on the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here today.
All right. As I mentioned, you are the new Community Engagement Officer for Sheffield Churches Council for Community Care. Tell us more about your role.
Right, so with my role, I'll talk a bit about S&4Cs first, just a bit of background information. So we're a charity in Sheffield. We've been running, providing service for older people for about 54 years. Some of these services include our befriending scheme and also a hospital home scheme as well. And so that's who we are as like just a general background. And so like I said, we support older people in a way that we like to support them in a way like how like a good neighbour might get the support. So we have a befriending scheme that's called a Good Neighbour scheme. And this befriending scheme is for older people 65 and over. And it's literally just prior to the pandemic. We have volunteers who will go out to visit older people because they're feeling lonely and isolated for various different reasons. But of course, now due to the pandemic, we've adapted our service that we provide telephone support now. But on top of that, we recognise that we don't have many older people from ethnic minority backgrounds. And so we of course wanted to do something about it. So we were lucky enough to be able to apply for funding, got funding to adapt our Good Neighbour scheme so that we can make our befriending service more culture sensitive and inclusive for older people from Black and minority ethnic communities, and also so that we can get volunteers from those communities as well. So my role is to adapt the service that we're already providing so it's more suitable for their needs. And on top of that, it's to find out like what are older people's barriers in actually accessing support. Why, or like what is making them feel lonely? Because you know they'd have different circumstances affecting them and affecting them differently to the rest of the population. So that's part of my role. And then it's also about liaising with all the organisations within Sheffield, especially BAME organisations, to see what they're doing, and so that I know what's happening around the city, so that if we come across an older person, I know who to refer them to, because older people they don't just have one need. If they're feeling lonely and isolated, having a chat isn't enough for them. They'll have a wide variety of needs. So yeah, that's what it is in a bit of a nutshell.
No, that's totally understood there. We'll come back into what you were explaining in a broader context. But you started by talking about what your organization does, which is like a charity. As you mentioned, it's like nearly a century-old charity. You know, so for those who don't know much about the charity in a broader context, is it like only old people that you work with, or you work with people as well with kind of like disabilities or that kind of thing?
So it's mainly for older people who are 65 and over. But of course, older people, we have older people have disabilities. We have some older people who have like mental health problems. We have some older people who have like other physical conditions. So it's for all older people who are 65 and over, but then we also have volunteers who are like range from 18 and above to actually support them.
Let me bring in my colleague Enoch.
Hello, Inez. Thank you so much, for being part of this program. I think it's very important, as communities, and especially as a people from the BAME background, to understand, that there is support in community. And especially that after, this pandemic has been more sort of like more effectively affecting so much people from the BAME background. I think it is coming time in time that this support is given out to to people from this background. My question to you is, what is the prevalence of people seeking this support? Because at the moment everyone is under lockdown. Most of our BAME elders are very vulnerable. I know there might be those measures in place, and I understand you might not be able to do those face-to-face visits. But what are the challenges that you're facing at the moment? Given mainstream does kind of a lot of support in place, they also have mechanisms of how to reach out to their people. But within the BAME community, we have those cultural differences, religious differences, and also most elders do live in family homes. So, for example, there might be people who agree to have their grandmothers or grandfathers live with them. But even though they live within those dynamics, it doesn't mean necessarily that they've got time for those other people. It might be just a grandma, a granddad just sat back, all their lives being around watching TV all the time, and going to bed, having medication, that's all. But that interaction, that human interaction is so important. What are the challenges are you facing, in these unprecedented times at the moment?
Yeah, so with the challenges, there's quite a few challenges. One would be, so if we look at like the baseline as it is, when you have older people from minority ethnic communities, to begin with, they are already finding it difficult to access support services. They're already hesitant to reach out for help because they're not used to seeking out help, and some of them have the mindset of, I can handle it on my own, I have my family. So prior to the pandemic, you have to kind of look at the mindset they had before this, and the fact that it was already difficult for them to access support services. And now we have the pandemic, which has now, made it even more difficult in the sense that, say like prior to pandemic, I could probably go visit an older person, explain to them what the service is, probably go to like a church and go to a church service, speak to a few people there in person, so they get to see me, they get to feel like they can trust me. But now that, of course, like we have the pandemic, it's more we have to use social media, ring people, talk to people over the phone about it. But it's kind of, having like a face-to-face interaction is so much, you have a lot more depth in comparison to like on the social media or trying to reach older people through telephone. So that's one challenge. And then in terms of the other challenges would be, I think that would be like quite a big one. And then in terms of other challenges, that's again like you're saying, the older person might be living with their family, but then the key question to think about is, okay, they're living with their family, but they can't be your only source of interaction. And there's been like a research that's been carried out that so only like 26% of respondents of older people, they were satisfied with the depth and connectedness of the relationship with their family members, whereas 61% of them actually felt distant or somewhat close to them. And I thought that was a very important figure, because it highlights, even though if an older person is saying, oh, we have family members to look after us, you kind of have to probe further and think like, okay, you have family members, but you're also interacting with, what do you do in daily life? And like I said, a lot of the older people, they're probably just, watching TV and not much else really.
Absolutely, and it is very important, as you just highlighted it as well, but there's also a challenge, for example, language barriers as well. And also, there is, we've seen time after time, news announcements on TV, or other media outlets where elders from the BAME background, or people from the BAME background, but in particular, are vulnerable people, been affected so much by this COVID-19. In the support that you give out, or to these people, or the befriending scheme, is there anything, which is sort of like packaged around COVID-19 awareness, because going back to the cultural differences and cultural beliefs as well, there is that element of, the elders know better, but there is this, a pandemic in place, which really mainstream-wise, nobody seems to be having any answers for it. So let alone our elders. So within the elders, from the BAME background, is there that kind of like, training for your volunteers around COVID-19 awareness or COVID-19 prevention, basically protecting themselves? Because that's really, really important. They might be lonely and you might have those volunteers to speak to them, but it's also very important, to have them understand what COVID-19 is, because some elders might have these beliefs that it doesn't exist, or it doesn't affect me, or I only saw it on TV, or it affects such and such people. But statistics and news that's coming out now just shows that people from the background, and especially those elderly or the vulnerable ones, are the ones who are susceptible and the ones who are dying at higher rates. So is there anything around COVID-19 awareness?
That's actually a really good question as well. I'm glad you brought it up. So just say this project is actually a new one. I only joined the post in March, April time of this year, as soon as we went into lockdown. So since then, my whole thing that I'm doing is setting up, raising awareness about the project. So at the moment, we don't have that COVID-19 awareness, particularly for volunteers to tell their older people. We do train them in the sense that we did have a few weeks where they were going to the older people when it was okay, about the PPE guidance and saying those kind of restrictions. But now that you have mentioned it, I think that is a very important point that I would definitely look into, because like you said, that people have varying beliefs about it, or maybe they're not understanding as well, or some might not even want to watch the news. So having a volunteer who kind of can give them that insight with their conversations, I think that'd be a great way to go about it, and I'll definitely look into it.
Yeah, just to add on what Enoch was talking about, the cultural perspective side as well. As you will know, the term BAME is a very broad term. It involves so many people or so many countries, different cultures, different religion. And as Enoch just mentioned as well, in terms of the old people, they are kind of like more vulnerable to so many things, not only to COVID-19, but to other illnesses as well as we mentioned earlier, loneliness, but also sometimes being there, I wouldn't use the word stubborn, but not understanding the current situation, the way things are unfolding. So sometimes because of their memory, some of them will be like having dementia as well, or other various illnesses. So I'm just wondering, in terms of, I know this role that you've got now is a new role, as you mentioned, that has just been kind of developed not so long ago. I'm just wondering, are you thinking of now developing other ideas or other roles, knowing that the BAME community is a very diverse community, looking at, we've got people from Asian background, Black African background, Caribbean background, where all those cultures are different, so that is, you are able to consolidate other backgrounds so that everyone feel inclusive. I think, Rehneesa, you are muted there.
Thank you, Melanie. So at the moment, we don't have any new specific roles for this project in the pipeline, but that's purely, again, because this is a very new project. It's a new project for SM4Cs, and it's a different way of going around stuff. So it's more of like a pilot project. It's for 2 years, so we're hoping that hopefully, like, we really want this project to be successful. We want to demonstrate that there is a need for befriending service that's catered towards the needs of BAME older people, and that we have BAME volunteers who do want to volunteer in an organisation like ours, so that in the future we can demonstrate to funders and other organisations that, one, there's a need for it, it's successful and it's really needed. So then from there, hopefully it can open up more doors and, you know, allow this service to actually be expanded. So in the immediate future, not at the moment, but the, you know, ultimately the success of the project will determine where it goes to.
So it is something that you'll be looking at, you'll be looking into the future.
Mm.
Okay, that's totally understood there. And also, as you will know, the BAME community have been disproportionately been affected with COVID-19. And this has been affecting us in various ways, looking at it maybe due to the kind of jobs that we do, due to our living conditions, due to many people from BAME communities living in poverty, you name them, uncountable. And I was reading a report just yesterday that says most of what has happened is not really new. It is due to the conditions that people have been living in, due to the, you know, society already knew about them. It was like a time when it will come, but it was something that was kind of like expected, but it's like nobody knew when it was going to come. And society was not really prepared for it as well when it comes how to tackle it. So having said that, yours now as a charity, because looking at this charity that you are working for right now, the Sheffield, if I'm not mistaken, Sheffield Churches Council for Community Care, a nearly 100-year-old charity, but only developing a BAME community post just due to COVID-19. I know you are new to it, but why did it take so long, in your opinion? Why do you think this has not been considered until now?
Yeah, again, that's a good question. And I'd just like to clarify, although I did come into the post this April, we had actually, it actually started a year before I arrived with a different, somebody else who was in the post, who then had left. So I was just picking up from that project. So it wasn't necessary, we had already begun on it and like put in the application for this type of befriending scheme well before the pandemic actually hit. But in terms of like the other question, why like now, that is a good question. And again, I don't have necessarily a specific answer for it. For me, it's just, and I completely understand where you're coming from, because it's not just with S4C, it's like with other organizations as well, that you kind of think that, okay, if this issue was already known, why now? But what I would like to say is that for me, it's the fact that I'm in the role now. I'm here to make that difference. And for me, I always see it as better later than never. Okay, it should have happened well before, but we've got it now. I want to make the most of it. I want to be able to expand the service as much as I can whilst I'm in the role, so that I can demonstrate in the future that, you know, these type of services are needed, and that we need to continuously have more services like this. So for me, it's about like looking more into the future and just focus on that and bringing more people together with projects like this.
Okay, that's absolutely wonderful to hear that. But I think adding on to what my colleague asked, just a few minutes ago, is long term. What's the sustainability of this BAME project in particular? Because the BAME community has been around for years. Probably as long as the very organization has existed. And is there any sort of like long-term plans or projects, in expanding this project? Because even though it's come later, it's been around for probably a year or so, in terms of supporting the BAME community, but do you have any plans of, maybe not having to wait until the pandemic is over, will that project still continue, even past that? Because what we've seen in the past is, the Samaritans, do a kind of like similar type of, phone call work, for offering emotional support. Even victim support does it, but even though it's police affiliated, But most people used to ring it, thinking sort of like, I can ring him when I'm lonely, when I'm, I'm on my own, I can speak to someone about, my life and all that. But looking at your organization, it could either have a huge impact on the BAME community, or it could stay stagnant, or just evolve itself around as it has been for all those many years. Is there anything in particular that you guys are planning that is here to stay, rather than being, focusing on this COVID-19 period of time?
Yeah, so again, with the project, we are adapting it so that, with the COVID-19, we've had to adapt the service so that we can provide telephone support. But again, it wasn't necessarily just a COVID-19 support. It was something that was planned to be for the whole duration of the project, not just for COVID-19, because we didn't even know what was going to happen back then. But again, back to like what I said previously, because it is a funded project, at the end, the success of it, and then not just the success of it, if we're able to demonstrate there's actually a genuine need for it, people who are able to reach out to people, we can show there are lots of people out in the community who need it, then that will ultimately really help in ensuring that this becomes something very sustainable. And if you look at all the like other projects that we have done with S4Cs, we have managed to, adapt them and ensure that they are sustainable. So again, with this project, we want this to be like a one-off project really, because then it's a bit sad that we put this effort in, these older people are coming to us for help and support, and then maybe like, oh yeah, sorry, we don't have any more funding for it. So we want it to be sustainable, we want it to like just stay, and we want it to be here beyond the pandemic and to be able to increase those links as well and help older people.
Yeah, so let's talk about here the pandemic in general. We saw what happened during this the first wave, because then nobody was prepared for it. It kind of caught everyone off guard. Now we are there is the talk of a second wave, and we are seeing kind of like different stages of lockdowns in various places in the country. Is there anything, if there is any, that your organization has learned from the first wave of the pandemic that you can take into this second wave that can make things better for the people that you'll be caring for, or that the people that you'll be supporting?
Yeah, I think one is like, prior to the pandemic, we didn't have the telephone support service. But because of the pandemic, we had to develop this new side to the support offering, and we realized actually it was actually very successful. And I think it was something that was prior to the pandemic that was considered, but we didn't like take action upon it because we thought, oh, we had face-to-face visits. Maybe telephone support might not be as successful if somebody wants face-to-face visit instead. But we realized there are actually people who would much prefer telephone support instead of face-to-face visiting, because one, they might be uncomfortable with having like a volunteer come to their home. They might not trust that person, even though we do like checks on the volunteer. It's still having somebody in your home. Maybe you have family in your home. We don't want another person coming in. So the telephone support, that is something we're definitely continuing, and that is how we're operating our services for now. Again, it would be, we started up like a pen pal service as well. So for people who didn't want to have like a volunteer calling them or anything like that, we started sending like letters and cards and like from different people from all across Sheffield and even different parts of the country as well. And that was really beneficial for people who didn't want that long-term support, but really appreciated having like, cards coming through the post, or like birthday cards, like thinking of you cards, which really actually meant a lot to them. So yeah, I think those are the two key things that have developed through the pandemic that we've learned that actually work. It helps to also it helps the older person to build that relationship with the volunteer first, find out about the volunteer, trust the volunteer, and then later, because now they've built that relationship, when it actually comes to face-to-face visits, they won't be as like they'll be more comfortable with having that volunteer coming to them.
Which I guess is really good, isn't it? Because looking at it, as you mentioned, they are developing a kind of relationship you know, where they tend to trust the person that they are communicating with or that's giving them that support. But I just wanted you to clarify quickly in terms of that telephone service. Is it something that you do? Is it like once in a week or twice a week or something that happens on a daily basis?
It's up to the older person. So if the older person wants a call once a week, then we can do it once a week. Sometimes they can be on the call. There's no like time limit on it either, but normally the calls generally last between, I'd say, like half an hour to an hour. Some older people just want someone to check up on them, make sure everything's okay, but they don't want to chat any longer. But for them, it meant a lot that somebody actually called me, took the time out to say, "Are you okay? Is there anything I can help with?" If somebody wants, say, like a bit more regularly, or we feel like they could do the regular type of support because they're in a more vulnerable situation, then we can offer more calls as well. There's no like limit exactly that, oh, it's only once a week or like only once a fortnight. It depends on the individual.
Okay, thank you for that as well. These phone calls can unravel a lot of things. You know, a volunteer could pick up the phone call, ring an elderly person. I know there's some safeguarding side of things, you know, on one side, but there's also data protection as well and confidentiality. So in terms of these phone calls, do you have any measures in place where any disclosure between this elderly person and the volunteer, you know, do you have what I would call a safeguarding or a designated safeguarding person in place? Because it's important, you know, to bear in mind that these elderly people, a lot of them do suffer from abuse. You know, it could be from family members, it could be from outsiders or scammers and things like that. So when they disclose these aspects to volunteers, do you have a communication line or a referral system where you could then, you know, refer these concerns to either the police or social services? You know, do you have any relationship with all these other organizations, you know, police and social services or housing? You know, is there any kind of like relationship that you have built in place that is actually sustainable in place so that, you know, these elderly people that people speak to, you know, volunteers speak to, actually feel more safer when they're talking to volunteers? Because it is a relationship that needs to be built between two people. So I think it's very imperative that if a volunteer gets to hear such information, you know, they are quickly able to report it. So do you have the mechanism in place at the moment?
Yeah, we definitely do, because as a charity, that's like our number one priority as well, because we also know for our older people, that's like a huge concern. So we definitely have that system in place, again, because we've already had the Good Neighbour scheme, which has been running for like 54 years. So we've had it in place for a very long time, and we have the proper procedures in place. So we have like the volunteers, when they have induction, they have their training about GDPR and keeping everything confidential. They're also told about the safeguard, what to do if they have any concerns. It doesn't matter how small or big it might seem to them, whatever it is. They do know the procedure, which is to raise up with their coordinator. And then the coordinator, they can speak to the volunteer, discuss it, and then according to what it is, take it further to management, or if needed, we do have the links with like the health centres, and again, if needed, the police. But as far as I'm aware, we've never had like an incident where it's had to be taken to the police level. But we do, you know, emphasize importance to our volunteers about the importance of safeguarding and what they're to do. We also keep track of like when they're calling the older person. So we are regularly keeping in touch with our volunteers every time they call the older person. So yeah, we do have that procedure in place, and we've already been using it so far.
Okay, so do you also have like a referral system, you know, just in case, because you basically need to have, I'm assuming, you know, you might have a system in place where you either have a database of these people, their home addresses, home telephone numbers, or you know, on the other side as well, you know, when it comes to language difficulties, you know, language barriers when you're ringing these people, do you have any other sort of like partners that you can work with? You know, for example, the Big Word or Language Line. Do you have people in place to kind of like working on this translation service? Because you know, if a volunteer is African and is ringing an Asian lady, you know, who can't speak English, you know, or a Chinese lady, you know, is there kind of like any sort of like a bridge in between, you know, to have them communicate better?
Yeah, so again, that is something we are looking into like translation services or like interpreters as well. Because at the moment, because again, like it's a new project, we only just started advertising the project. We don't have that many like BAME older people who don't speak English. At the moment, they are the ones who can speak good enough English to be able to communicate with them. But one thing would be to have volunteers who can speak good English, but also speak the community language of the older person. So say if we have somebody who's a Chinese older woman who speaks very limited English, then we would probably do like targeted recruitment for a volunteer who speaks Chinese, so that we can communicate with that volunteer as well. And also, like I said, we are looking into like different translation services, different interpreters as well for, you know, additional support when it comes to these kind of issues.
Thank you for that. That's very handy of you. I just wanted to ask as well, speaking of the volunteers, right now, how many volunteers do you have? I know you mentioned that the role is new and you're still kind of like looking for volunteers. And in terms of the BAME community, are you right now like caring for, are you caring for many of them? Do you have numbers, or you just, yeah, do you have numbers?
Yes, at the moment, we only have like a handful, about like 10 or so volunteers and 10 or so BAME older people. We do have more volunteers coming through, and still working on, you know, making the project more known to people, because it's here we're saying it up, but I think a key important, the stage we're at right now is raising awareness about the project to different organizations. So we're contacting other BAME organizations, letting them know about we're doing, finding out what they're doing as well. And again,
right. Sorry to interrupt you there. So like talking of the volunteers and you kind of like trying to collaborate with other organizations. Let's say if I want to volunteer, what are the kind of skill set that you're looking for, and how can you approach me, or how can I approach you if a person wants to volunteer? What do they need to do, or what are the skills that you'll be looking for?
So in terms of skills, we would need somebody who's reliable, because if you think about these older people, if they're not having much interaction with anybody really, they actually really look forward to a phone call. So you need to be reliable and call when you say you're going to call, because if you don't, the older person will be looking forward to your call and then not happen, and then they'll be really disappointed. And we don't want to be in that position where we have a volunteer who isn't that reliable. So that's a really important one, not just from a professional point of view, but for the sake of the older person. They need to be really caring and understanding, because again, like the older person probably doesn't get much time to speak to people. So when you're on the phone, you have some older people who will literally just like tell you the whole life story and like tell you like things they're upset about. So you need to be really caring and understanding. You need to have great listening skills as well, really important, because you'll have some older people who just want to talk and talk and talk, and you'll have they just want to let off whatever's on their chest. So you need to be a good listener without, you know, constantly interrupting them. That's really important. Again, it would be like sticking to the safeguarding rules and, you know, the confidentiality aspect of it too, which is really important. In terms of specific experience, so there isn't specific experience that you do need to have. You just need to be a nice and friendly person, while at the same time maintain those professional boundaries with the older person as well. And you know, talk to them like a friend, but at the same time, remember you are there as a support person and you're there to keep things confidential for that older person. And in terms of actually wanting to volunteer, check on our website, which is SCCCC.co.uk, and you can email us through there, or alternatively they can email us, which is at volunteers@sf4c.co.uk, and then you'll have an application process, and then the volunteer coordinator will go through the application and contact the volunteer and have an induction as well.
Thank you very much for that. That's very handy of you as well. I just wanted us to talk about Black History Month, especially we being Black History Month right now, and talking about achievements and that kind of thing, especially you now, this role being a new role that's been developed at the Sheffield Churches Council for Community Care, or the SCCCC, So in terms of your background, prior to getting this role, what was your background?
So,
and what does Black History Month means to you?
Okay, so prior to this, I completed my degree in psychology. I've always been very interested in psychology and mental health. And I knew that once I have graduated, then I want to be in a position where I'm actually making use of what I've learned. And then I also did my master's at Sheffield University, which is why I wanted to, get my job in Sheffield too. And I've also done various volunteer opportunities within BAME organizations. Like I was Scouts leader for a Scouts group that was predominantly for people of minority ethnic communities, and also working at a food bank that was like a collaboration between the Muslim and Jewish people of the community. So that's a bit about my background, and then what I'd like to do as part of this role and why I was so interested in it is because I felt like I have that knowledge about mental health and also that experience of being a BAME Pakistani, so that I want to be able to combine it. And then as somebody who's kind of experienced and kind of has that understanding of what the mentality is of other ethnic minority communities, particularly Pakistani people, I felt like I would be in a good position to be able to understand them and adapt the service in a way that would be suited for their needs. And for Black History Month, I think it's really great to have like a month where you actually bring to the forefront what other Black prominent people have contributed to society, which often gets like hidden away or people don't know much about. And it is something, again, I haven't really planned anything specific for this month, again, because we're setting it all up. But for next year, I want to be able to highlight and mark down all those important annual observances for ethnic minority communities and hold some stuff for those.
Oh, that's great, thank you. And again, tagging back to what my colleague was mentioning about this Black History Month, I mean, in broad terms, it's about celebrating achievements of our role models, but also looking at at the dark side of what people from the BAME background go through on a daily basis. Police brutality, injustices, criminal justice systems, now being built, for the purpose of doing what they do when it comes to Black people. I think it's. I wanted to ask you a little bit of something I think we mentioned earlier on, in terms of how you reach out, to the elders and the volunteers, the relationship between the elders and the volunteers. Obviously, for some, for an elderly family that might see your advert, your service, reading Sheffield Churches Council for Community Care, if a Muslim elder read this, something pops up in mind, oh no, this has nothing to do with me because I'm not Christian, oh, I'm not from the Church of England, something basically around a religious lines might pop up until they understand what the organization is about. So do you have any communication kind of like measures in place to explain this to these elders? And again, it's the other way around, because there's some non-religious elders as well, who don't believe in any, in any religion. So when they see this church-based community organization, then some kind of like question mark pops up, so they might ask themselves, I'm not religious, I don't want anything to do with, with churches or anything like that, or I'm Muslim, I don't want anything to do with churches and things like that. So how are you addressing that?
Yeah, and that's something that's actually popped up quite a few times when I've been speaking to like different organizations, different people, or like even when I speak to our current volunteers about, okay, what made you volunteer with us, or what barriers you think other older people might face. This is something that has cropped up. And just to clarify, we did start off like back around 50 years ago as like a church, based thing, but it isn't a religious charity. Just to make it clear, we are for everybody, and that's why we have, since quite a few years ago, we've gone by the short name of S and 4 Cs. So it's literally just the acronyms of the full name. But of course, like some people, you would read the full name. We would just tell them, like I'm telling you it now, it's not specifically a religious organization. It is for everybody. We have, people, we have all these service users who are Christian. We have service users who aren't like Christian as well. It's literally not affiliated in that sense with it's not a religious charity. So yeah, it will literally be this case of like clarifying that when I do speak to older people, that it might seem like it, but don't feel like it's not for you. It is for everybody.
Okay, yeah, maybe that addresses that bit of uncertainty, when it comes to that. And again, it can be that support is support, regardless of your religious background or your ethnicity background, as long as you get the support that you need. I think that's what's the most important. And hopefully, going forward, you might have probably more activities, if all this pandemic and lockdowns is out of the way. Is there any sort of like future activities that you might think of doing, with the elders, rather than, having to speak to them? Because yes, emotionally, they need someone to talk to, and loneliness is one of the biggest killers as well. But, is there anything around activities that you might probably, sort of like arrange in future? Just around with these older people?
Yeah, so originally we did have plans for like community drop-ins or like road shows. So those, once we get a bit back to normal, then we can look at the the community drop-ins. And then on top of that, we are also, as like a charity as a whole, looking into further stuff that we can do. But I think like a big part of it would also be like collaborating with other organizations, seeing what other organizations are doing. So when we have volunteers speak to the older person, they can tell them that, there's this organization, they're doing this. Maybe it might be something you're interested in. So yeah, as a charity, mainly it's around befriending and meeting the person in their home. But that doesn't mean to say that we can't, help linking that older person with other stuff that's going around in their community. And also that I think that's something that once we do have more volunteers, I want to let them know of like organizations that are within the community. So that, because say if somebody, older person's feeling lonely and isolated, and they're not really aware of what's happening in their community, then our volunteers are kind of in a good position to actually, because they're going to their homes or talking to them, they're in a good position to let them know about what's going on. So that'll be like another way of, having that other social element as well.
I think that was a really good question my colleague asked there, asking about the religious perspective, because as we mentioned at the beginning, people are from various countries, different cultures, different religions. So I'm not surprised that, as you mentioned there, that question has already popped up. But coming back to Black History Month, you mentioned that yeah, you're not looking to organize anything this month, but as Enoch said, the Black History Month is about celebrating the achievement and also the injustices that are happening to Black people across the world, or in terms of the UK BAME communities. You know, even we've seen, even with this pandemic, the way things have unfolded, it has affected us in so many ways. These are just these has happened as a result of decades of, you know, inequality and decades of injustices. We see if anything happens, like if in terms of crime, the way the justice system sometimes deals with Black people or BAME communities is totally different to a white person or English person, you know. So here again, in terms of, you said it is very important to celebrate this month, which we all agree to that. But diversely, or looking at the BAME community in general, there is also this question that's always coming out, especially recently, the way people are described, or the way people like to be described. Like some people like to be called, for example, me being of African origin, you know, some want to be called Black African, or some Black Caribbean, or some want to be Asian. I'm just wondering, what's your own take on this in terms of that broader? Do you think it is kind of logic to describe people in that broad term, BAME, or it should be Black, Asians, or other terms?
Yeah, so just talking about what you mentioned about Black History Month, I definitely agree. It's not just about, you know, celebrating achievements, it's also recognizing, and not just recognizing, it's also making the point of implementing changes so that we can reduce the impact of the disadvantages have on Black people and also other ethnic minority communities. And also just to elaborate on that further, so older people in general, what leads to loneliness is the fact that they might be from a disadvantaged, like be in a disadvantaged neighborhood, they might have like low income, they might have been separated from their family. That's something that affects, you know, all older people, but something that affects in particular older from ethnic minorities can be that inequality, which further makes them lonelier. Also, maybe experiences of racism whilst actually migrating to the UK. That contributes to their feelings of loneliness as well, because whilst they were adapting to life in the UK, probably felt like they didn't belong because of lack of respect as well. So definitely it is such an important topic, and it's a very deep topic as well. So yeah, that's that. And then also in terms of like the name as well, for me personally, I know some people are not okay with using the word BAME, because they find that, you know, and I acknowledge that within the BAME, everybody's different and not all like one group. Like say as Pakistani, I have like completely different culture and customs compared to you. So even within the group itself, we're so very diverse. But for me personally, I'm okay with it just as in a professional sense. It's just a bit easier to say it, but that doesn't mean that I don't recognize and acknowledge that within each different section, everybody requires different support. And also I think another thing is that when I'm speaking to people or like older people, I do like to ask them what their views on it are and how they approach it, and how probably they like me to, word they like me to use. Some people really hate the word BAME, and if they don't like it, that's fine. We can, you know, use a different word. I can refer them by their culture. Say if I'm speaking to somebody like who's Asian, I could let people of Asian origin, or some people prefer saying ethnic minorities, and in that case, minorities. So I feel like it's about recognizing that some people don't mind which word is used, some people do, but not to just assume and just label people. So that's the kind of view I have on it.
Okay, I'll just allow my colleague Enoch to ask a final question, because we've got less than 2 minutes to go.
Thank you, Rehneesa. I think again, you know, well, thank you, for being able to come on to this today's show. But also importantly, what I want to know is, how is the future looking like for your organization in terms of bettering the BAME elders, because these are people that have been left behind for years and years. They've worked hard to build this country. They've contributed a lot to build this country, but now they're in isolation, they're in loneliness. Mainstream society doesn't look at them as people who are once, important in our today's lives. So my last question to you is, how is the future looking like for our elders in our communities at the moment?
That's very
Rehneesa, make that short and sweet, please. Yeah.
Okay. So what I just say in a short and sweet manner is, so I would like to look at it more from the positive angle, but things are changing, better late than never, slowly but surely they are changing. As SM4Cs, we've been running this befriending scheme for a very long time, so we're very experienced in providing befriending scheme to older people. So now it's just a case of making slight changes and adapting it in a way that suits the BAME older people. And it won't be easy to, encourage and convince older people, to access support services, because they've spent so many years not wanting to, seek help for various different reasons, and very valid reasons as well. So it's difficult in that sense of gaining older people's trust, which is something that takes a very long time to do, and it isn't something that should be rushed. But I am hopeful that, with persistence and patience, then we'll be able to provide a good service for these older people. And I would hope in the future that older people will become more comfortable, seeking out help as well, once they see that we are here for them and we do want to really help them.
Rehneesa, just a final one on this. Is there a number or a website for people that will be needing to seek support, like those elderly people who need support? Is there a number that they can ring, or where do they need to go?
Yeah, so it would be the SM4Cs, and I literally don't know the number at the top of my head. But we are on Savile Street East, and yeah.
All right. Okay. That's not a problem. Thank you very much once again, Rehneesa Inez, for your time, for appearing on African Voices platform. As we mentioned, that was Rehneesa talking to us here, and she's the new BAME Community Engagement Officer for Sheffield Churches Council for Community Care. This is a new role that has been developed. And to you, our viewers, also, thank you very much for joining us. Until next week, this show was presented by myself, Baillor Jalloh, and my colleague, Enoch Karimba, joining us from home.
Thank you.